In this video, I'm going to show you how to use the Cakeheads Face and Body Molds, which are really pretty easy to use. I'm very excited about. Okay, so here I have already used them to just show you a little bit of what you have to look forward to. Now you could use any mediums you want in these molds. You can use fondant, you can use gum paste, you can use modeling chocolate, you could even use clay if you were going to go that route. They're easy, super easy to use with all of the mediums. Here I have used gum paste for, I think, actually all except the head. The head I used fondant, but I'll get into that in a little bit. I just wanted to show you. Here are the legs and the arms. Now using these molds, you can actually use them to whatever thickness you want, meaning the body could be, you could use it, put enough of the material in so that it comes out pretty thick. Here I've used modeling chocolate with the molds. And you can see my body here is relatively thick. But if I wanted a thinner body, then I could put less into the mold. You don't have to fill the mold all the way up to the back. See, in this one, I have less. In the white version, that's a gum paste body, and I have less in there, so my figure will come out a little bit skinnier. It's the same with the head. You can make the head more bulbous, a fatter head, or you can make a thinner head with not as much on the back, whichever you prefer. That's one of the beautiful things about using these molds. And here again, I'm just showing you the difference between the two heads. The one on the right is a little bit thinner than the one on the left. Here's the face mold, the torso mold, the arms, and the legs. And I'm going to show you how to use them so that your material comes out of them very easily. So I have powdered sugar here. You could use cornstarch if you'd rather. And you just want to get it inside the mold, and then you want to turn the mold so that that powdered sugar covers the entire inner surface of the mold. And then you want to tap out any extra that you have on top of that, because we don't want that to kind of get in, to mess up the features of the mold, the extra powdered sugar. So make sure you tap that out. This particular project, I'm using gum paste for the head, the face. I like to use fondant, and sometimes I'll use modeling chocolate, but fondant is probably the easiest to work with because you have the most time to manipulate the face before it starts getting, kind of cracky like it will with gum paste. But if you work quickly, then gum paste is not a problem at all. So whatever you're using, you want to make sure you knead it well so that it's the same, moistness throughout. And the main idea here is you want to get out all of the cracks where you're going to be inserting your medium into the mold. You don't want any cracks because those cracks will come out on the face. So I rolled it into a ball and then into this kind of cone shape here so that I could easily slide it into the mold. And once you've done that, I've got a little extra powdered sugar that I have on the counter here, and I'm using my thumbs, my very bendable, strange thumbs. I know how strange they are. I'm sorry, I apologize. But I'm using my thumbs to push in the medium into the back of the mold, kind of repeatedly here. And I'm doing this to make sure that it goes all the way down to the bottom of the mold and it picks up the features, all of the features, the eyes, nose, and mouth, very well, and so I don't have to worry about that. So make sure that you do that. Now, I like to insert, you don't have to do this, but I like to insert a little styrofoam ball. The one I'm using is a smaller one. It's a 3/4 of an inch styro ball. And the reason I do that is because when I make my figures, I like to have that ball in there to stick onto my wooden skewer in the middle of my figure so that my head, if my head gets really heavy from the hair, it doesn't push down. It will just go right into that ball and I won't have to worry about losing my neck on my figure here. So you push that ball down into the center, push it down a little bit farther than I did. You want to make sure it's down into the mold and not like coming out of the back of the head when you're done with this. So make sure you push it down well. And then now what I'm doing here is I'm just kind of, I've got this, I have not ripping off this extra gum paste. You can see I'm going to kind of use that as a handle to pull this out of the mold. And I just use my fingers to kind of separate the edge, to pull back on the edge so that I can easily just pull it out like so. I've got all my features perfectly as they should be coming out of the mold. It was super easy. And I'm still not going to take this extra off just yet. I can cut that off whenever I want, but right now I'm going to kind of use it as like a little base here so I can work on my face, or I can just use it as like a little place to hold my mold while I'm working on it. So, you know, that's a trick that helps make painting the face on a lot easier. Okay, on to the torso. So same idea with the powdered sugar. Get it in there and turn it all around to make sure it covers the entire surface. Dump off the extra. But you'll notice this gum paste I'm using is white. I didn't have a ton of the flesh colored, so I just went with the white. And the thing is, with the neck will be, you know, not flesh colored, but I can always go back with petal dust afterwards, flesh colored petal dust, and just color the neck, which you won't see very well anyway, because I've got a lot of hair going on in this figure. But that's just why I'm using white here. Okay, so I rolled it into the kind of like a little bit of a sausage shape. And you saw how I just put it in there, and now I'm just pushing down again with my thumbs. You don't have to be as vigorous as you were with the face mold because there's not a lot of detail to pick up on the torso here. We just want to make sure it's filled. Now remember, this one I filled all the way to the edge. Okay, so it's kind of flush with the edge of the mold. And that will give you a thicker body. But this one is thinner. And this thinner one I wanted for this project because the thinner one, the back lines up with the back of the neck a little bit better, and I'm making a little girl, so she didn't need to be extra thin. So if you want it, she didn't need to be thick, right? She could be a little bit thin. So you just take a little extra out of the mold and you push down a little bit. Don't feel like you have to fill up the mold all the way. You definitely do not have to. And I get my finger and I push down underneath that neck there, and that kind of lines up the back with the neck a little bit better for me. You could totally just fill the whole mold and not push down on the back of the neck, and it would still be fine when you want to make a thicker figure. But I just wanted to show you, make sure you knew that you could make it thinner, and you could just work your finger in there like right behind that neck, and your figure will come out thinner. So there's lots of ways you can use the mold. To the body if you wanted to. So for the same idea as the head, using the skewer to get the skewer into the styrofoam in the body so that your figure doesn't collapse on you. You don't have to wait for it to dry too much. If you're not using styrofoam in the body, which I did not in this project, then you will have to wait maybe a day or so in order to put it all together so that it dries a little bit and hardens up on you, your medium. Okay, so you see me here. This is me making a skinnier body. You see I didn't fill it all the way to the top, and I had my finger under the neck there a little bit. Okay, you can just pop it out of the mold now. What I like to do is put it into the freezer for 5 minutes. When you do that, and then you take it out and you pop it out of the mold, it comes out much easier for you, see? And then you don't have to mold it back into shape. You don't lose any of the definition or anything. But it is just pretty much just as easy to pop out without putting it in the freezer, but you might just have to smooth it back into shape a little bit if it does get a little distorted on you. Either way, it will work fine. I just like to do the freezer method because it's a little bit easier. And you can see how it's a little bit thinner than if you filled it up all the way. And then you can just smooth out the back if it needs a little bit more smoothing, or if you're going to cover it with clothing, you don't have to worry about it. You could squeeze in the waist to make her waist a little bit thinner if you want. This was designed to be a young child, but you can change it to make it anything you want it to be. If you want her torso to be longer, or his torso, you can definitely thin it out a little bit. And you make it a little skinnier. You just use this as a base to help you get proportions the way they should be. and you can manipulate it however you want. Okay, moving on to the arms. Same idea, powdered sugar into the arms and then turn it all around to get that powdered sugar all in there. Okay, I like to do the arms at the end because obviously the arms are probably one of the things that gets the most manipulated into the position you want them to be. I'm using gum paste here for the arms, but fondant is, in my figure, because I use the gum paste, it got a little wrinkly because gum paste you have to work with really, really quickly because it starts to dry right away. If you use fondant, you won't have that issue. But my gum paste was the same color as my face, and I didn't feel like getting out some fondant and coloring it, so that's why I'm using gum paste. Fondant, though, is a much better choice. But you could also use modeling chocolate as well. Okay, so what you want to do is roll it into that long sausage piece, and then you want to slide it in a little bit into the hand section. And once you slide it in there, you want to push it deep down in there well, because if you don't push it in there well, you won't pick up the definition of the fingers, and you might not even get the full fingers when you pull it out. Okay, so that's one mistake that could easily be made, is not pushing that down into the hand really well. If you push it in there well, you'll be totally fine and the hand will come out perfect. It's not hard to do. You just have to remember to just push it down in there a little bit. So you see me continuously doing that with my very bendy, ugly thumbs. Okay, so also, this is just like the torso mold in that if you fill it all the way to the edge, your arm is going to be a little bit thicker, and actually you'll see a little bit of an edge on the arm. If you want to get rid of that edge, you could easily just do that and then smooth it out once you take it out of the mold. But if you don't want that edge to begin with, you can just not fill it up all the way. So here I was taking out a little bit of the mold and smoothing it down in there so that it didn't come up all the way to the edge. And that will give me a little bit of a thinner arm, and I won't have that extra edge or lip on the arm when you pull it out. You'll see what I'm talking about when you pull it out of the mold. Also, that goes for the thumb part that you could see as well. You can see in this one, I did not add as much to the thumb part there, and so when I pull it out, I won't have an edge on my thumb. If you fill it all the way up to the edge of the mold, that thumb part as well, there will be a little edge. But it's easily smoothed out, so it's not a big deal either way. But just want to make you aware of that. Okay, you could pop this into the freezer, same deal, for 5 minutes and pull it out. But here I haven't done that. I'm just carefully, no, actually this one did go into the freezer, I'm sorry. This one went into the freezer, so it's nice and stiff pulling it out, which makes it super easy to get out. So if you're not very good at getting it out of the mold right away, then use the freezer trick. That will work for you. And then after it comes out of the freezer, it starts to get soft again very quickly, and then you can just smooth out your edges and your lines there on the arm so you can't see them anymore, and you have a perfect arm. You can see the little edge on the thumb there. That's because this one was filled up all the way. Again, it doesn't really look bad at all. You just have to smooth it out, smooth out the edge a little bit if you want to get rid of it. Here I am, just if you want to manipulate the arm, to change it a little bit. You want the wrists to not be so thick, not so childlike. You could just run your thumb underneath the pad of the hand there and thin it out a little bit. Your fingers on that wrist to thin it out a little bit. And then you can manipulate the arm any way you want to when you add it to your project. Okay, here's the other arm that I didn't fill up as much. And so this one's going to be a thinner arm. And there's no edge or extra on that thumb there. Okay, so that's just to show you the difference between the two. And then again, you pull it out of the mold, and then you can just smooth it so that it's perfect, those edges there. And you have perfectly proportional arms for your body. Again, same with this, you can make them longer. You can pull on them a little bit, you can roll them a little bit, roll underneath the pad there of the hand and make it longer if you're making an older person however you want. This is just a great start for you, or it can be used as is if you're making a young child. And this will even work for a toddler or even a baby as well. You don't want to put the arms into the fridge or the freezer, because when you try to pull it out of the mold, it will break. Modeling chocolate tends to do that. But you can use modeling chocolate and not put it in the freezer and just pull them out. And I'm going to show you here. This is me using the mold without putting it into the freezer. So again, I'm just filling the arm, just sliding it down in there, pushing it in so that it picks up the entire fingers and all the definition of the fingers. Pushing it down in well. You also don't have to worry about smoothing it so much if you're not going to put it in the freezer, because when you pop it out, you can just easily fix any imperfections. Okay, and now, no freezer. I'm just carefully, I popped it out, and now I'm just tugging gently, and it comes out perfectly. So that is another option if you don't want to put it into the freezer. Okay, moving on to the legs. Same idea with the legs. We're going to put the powdered sugar in it, and we're going to turn it all around so that it covers the entire surface, and then we're going to dump the excess off. For my project, I used gum paste for the legs. I used fondant for the legs. So you can see, you could use all different mediums for one project. It really doesn't make a difference. Okay, you're going to want to roll it into a sausage shape again as well. I'm going to start on one edge, and I like to get that down in there because there's a foot down in there that needs that medium to get into it. So make sure you push down in the bottom there as well. And then you can see I just kind of snake it along to fill up the rest of the area, and then I just kind of push it down and smooth it out. This is the same as the arms and the torso. If you don't want the legs as thick, don't have to fill it up all the way to the edge. If you want them a little thinner, again, there will be a little bit of a lip if you do fill it all the way to the edge, but nothing that can't be smoothed out. For young children, a little bit thicker is generally their body type, so it works well for that, but you could always thin it out. The leg again, once you get it out of the mold, same deal. You could use it as a base and manipulate it how you want it, or you could just use it as is. So I'm just getting my finger in there and smoothing the back of that, the ankle there. And then you could either pop it into the fridge, or you could just pull it right out of the mold. Here I had popped it into, the freezer. I keep saying fridge, but I really put it in the freezer for 5 minutes. And popping the other one out. And voila, you have a beautifully shaped leg. Okay, so you can see there's that little edge, that little lip. Now you can just go ahead and smooth that out. Again, I'll have to wait for it to, it's a little hard right now because I got it out of the freezer, but it will soften up and then I can smooth that out. Also, if you want to define the leg a little bit more, like if you want to define the calf a little bit more on the back, you can just press underneath the knee or behind the knee there and kind of round out the calf a little bit with your fingers. If you want to define the front of the knee, you can do that as well. Here I am just kind of smoothing out the back of the leg and making sure I smooth out any imperfections that might, if I did not get the cracks out before I put it into the mold or didn't smooth it well, then you might see some imperfections. Here I am just kind of using my thumb to define the knee a little bit. You can just run it underneath where the knee would be, and then you can thin out the back of the knee there, and you have a lovely leg for your figures, and you can see the toes are defined. If you want to thin out that ankle, you could do that as well. Again, for anything other than a small child, if you want this to be a woman, you would thin out the ankle a little bit. It would not need to be as thick of an ankle. And here again, I'm just pushing behind that knee to define the not the calf, the upper, your thigh, the back of the thigh a little bit, and then using my thumb to just define the kneecap a little bit. But again, you don't have to do that. You could just leave it as is, as it looks great as is. But if you wanted more definition, you could definitely put the time in and do that. So that is how you easily use these molds. I'm so happy with how they came out because they're so easy to use and they just save so much time when creating a figure. All of these body parts to use as a base, so you don't have to worry about your proportions. Everything's all set for you, and then you can just take them and manipulate how you want them for your specific project. You can use wooden skewers in the shapes. You can, so for the legs, what I like to do is take a wooden skewer that has a pointy end, and I like to put it up through the ankle and twist it as I'm pushing. You could do this with your fondant or your gum paste or your modeling chocolate that has come right out of the mold, but it's actually very helpful if you wait a day. So I used fondant at one point on one project, and I let it sit overnight, and then I did this the next day, and it was beautiful. It didn't cause my leg to come out of proportion at all. I didn't have to fix it towards the end. It just went up nicely through the ankle, and it was a perfect leg. If you do it right after your medium comes out of the mold and you don't give it time to sit, which is what I'm doing here, that's what I'm showing you here. You can still get it done, which I'm doing, but you might have to smooth it out, fix it a little bit once that skewer goes up through the leg. Okay, so I have a little bit of fixing to do here because it did come out of proportion a little bit. So letting your medium sit for a day is very helpful if you're using fondant. Gum paste as well, you could let it sit as well. It might be a little trickier though because gum paste dries a little bit differently than fondant does. But again, you can do it right away. You don't have to let it sit. You'll just have to fix your legs a little bit to get them back into shape. So I like to put a skewer in both legs. I keep at least one of the legs, if not both, the skewers longer coming out of the ankle so that they can just go up into the torso. And then when you're ready to put them on your cake or whatever you're going to be putting them on, they will have the skewer coming out of the foot to go into your cake. Sometimes I just do one skewer long to go into the cake, and the other leg I put a skewer up in it, but I don't leave it long. The Alice in Wonderland cake I did, I had a skewer in both legs, but only one of them did I keep long to poke into the cake. I didn't feel that I needed the other one. So you don't always have to have both of them long. And then you can just push it right up into your torso. If you have styrofoam in your torso, you want to push it up into the styrofoam. And if you do have styrofoam, then you won't have to wait to put your whole figure together for anything to dry because it will just, it won't sag on you. If you do not have styrofoam, you might have to wait a day to stand this up before you start dressing it and putting hair on it and such. Legs to the torso, and then I had another wooden skewer going up into her head, down into the torso, and then I dressed her, and then I added her arms on afterwards. Here's my Alice in Wonderland girl I made using the face mold and the body mold set, and I have a few other tutorials up on cakeheads.com, as well as her full tutorial on how I made her, just showing you a few more projects you can do if you want some ideas using the face mold. Make sure you check out my free video on how to create the face after you've gotten your medium out of the face mold, how to create the eyes and paint the face. You can manipulate the face a little bit, and I hope you enjoy using the molds. See you.